You're recovering from your past. You feel like life is taking your last. At your dreams you're starting to laugh. It's time to put down the emotional bags. Tune in to the Simply Self podcast. The Simply Self podcast. Tune in.
You are listening to the Simply Self podcast, hosted by Soekneiuaha, aka Pastor Greer. Listen, I feel sort of accomplished. Let me tell you why. Because I'm recording my second podcast today, back to biggity back. Actually, not technically back to back. What happened was I took an Instagram break, and I was scrolling through and whatnot, and I found an idea for a reel that I was gonna do, and then I lost the video, and I hadn't saved it. So then I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and record this podcast. That's what happened. Yeah, because the previous episode was about stopping all that lying. We all these little white lies we tell ourselves. So I was gonna tell the truth, and I took an Instagram break, and I got distracted, but I was able to pull it back together. So I'm recording the second episode of the day. So I'm excited about that. So shout out to me for that for right now. Okay. You are listening to the Simply Self podcast, the Simply Self podcast. Let's run that back. You are listening to the Simply Self podcast. I almost forgot my name. Jesus. Hosted by Soekneiuaha, aka Pastor Greer. Maybe I should have taken a little break. But I'm okay. AKA Pastor Greer. And today's episode is Who Are You Now? There's a lot of transition going on in our lives. Of course, we have come up on a new year. Some of us are still getting our sea legs. Some of us still feel like, wait a minute, I'm still trying to tie up the loose ends of 2022, and now we're in 2023. And sometimes you don't really feel right till the middle of the year. And then next thing you know, it's the fall, and then it's Thanksgiving, and it's Christmas, and you're doing this all over again. I get it. But let's talk about when you have transitions in your life, how do you cope with missing elements of your old life? Because let me tell you something. Moving changes you. Promotion changes you. Marriage changes you. Parenthood changes you. Struggle changes you. Trauma changes you. Any type of change, any type of transition, you then become a different version of yourself. And I like to think that the transitions that I've made, especially over the past 5 years, have made me an even better person. Now, did every decision work out for me? No. Did I always listen to God's voice? No. Did I always obey God the first time He told me to do something? No. But thankfully, because of God's grace, I was able to learn from my mistakes, and I had another chance to get it right, frankly. The question I'm asking myself now is like, who am I? Because I knew things were going to change when I became a mother. I knew that. I knew physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, career-wise, all that was going to change. I already knew. Okay. But knowing something and actually living through something are two totally different things. Like, I know what it's like to live through a hurricane. Being a Florida native, spending any amount of time in Florida, if you are there during hurricane season and you experience a hurricane, you know what hurricanes are like. It's one thing to know that hurricanes exist. It's another thing to see a hurricane on the news, It's another thing, though, to actually live through one. And even still, It's another thing to live through the different categories. A category 1 is not the same as a category 5. I think the highest one I have experienced was a 4. The slow moving ones are tend to be the worst, for Florida, of course, because if it's slow moving, that means it's going to dump rain on a specific spot for a really long time, and it could cause flooding. Then you have the faster moving ones that come through quickly, but they do a lot of damage. So it's like either way, you're dealing with something, right? So it's one thing to know about parenthood changing you and all the changes, all the hormonal changes that I'm still going through with pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, the whole 4th trimester. Yeah, it's real. Okay. Those 3 months after the child is born, oh yeah, it's real. And we're coming up on the 4th month of Alonzo's life, and it's just like, yo. I wouldn't trade Alonzo for anything in this world. I love being his mother, okay? That face, those little cheeks, those beautiful eyes, he's scrumptiddlyumptious, okay? He is just a light in our world. And also, it's kicking our butts, man. Pray for us. We tired and we're stressed out, and we're trying to figure out, we're still navigating the newness of it. Every stage has its challenges. The pregnancy, going back even before the pregnancy, the fertility journey had its own elements. Then the pregnancy had its own elements. Then towards the end of the pregnancy, things started to get kind of hairy. Ended up having him a few weeks early, ended up having to have a C-section, had to deal with that. And then coming home from the hospital, and all these different steps, all these different parts of the experience have their own elements that you have to deal with. I knew all that was going to happen, but baby, living it has been quite the journey. My head is still spinning. Our son was born November 3rd, 2022. It is, at the time of this recording, February 21st, 2023. And our heads are still spinning. Cliff is way more level-headed than I am, especially in this situation. But he, as a father, as a provider, he's facing his own challenges. But for me, it's like, whew. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And listen, let's talk about it. Okay. I thought that I was going to be more comfortable with my postpartum body than I am. We had plans to go back to the gym last month. Well, I planned to go back to the gym last month, and then my body said, girl, you're not ready. You are not ready, ma'am. And I think with the idea of me going back to the gym, in the back of my mind, I expected to feel better about myself. But the feeling better about myself was placed in the wrong area. It was more about how I look to myself, not really how I look to other people, mainly how I look to myself, and then how I look to my husband. And that kind of took a minute to wrap my brain around. I lost 50 pounds in the first 2 weeks of Alonzo's life because of the preeclampsia. I had a lot of swelling. So that explained why I was as big as I was, because everybody thought I was having twins. They're like, oh, Alonzo's hiding his stippling. I'm like, no, it's just a big baby. He's all right. But I am still going through a bit of an identity crisis. I have had to let go of a lot that I didn't think I was going to have to let go of. I thought I could still do it all. And I know there's so many people, especially women, that feel that feeling of, I really thought I could still do everything. And then you try to do everything and you start dropping the ball and you start feeling bad about yourself, and you start feeling unworthy, and you start, all the things, all the stuff and all the things, right? Well, I went through all the stuff and all the things. Had to step back from ministry responsibilities at church. I had to, the sheer truth was supposed to be coming back January 23rd. I was hyped. I was ready. I made the flyers. I had the logo for the new year. I redid the opening song, the theme song. I was ready. Took new pictures. I was ready, right? Well, the day came, and I made a joke about it. I made a video, Instagram reel about it, to kind of deflect from the disappointment that I was feeling, because I had a feeling I wasn't going to be able to do it that day. I had a feeling. And it was getting to where it was like maybe 3 hours until the live. I still felt confident that I'd be able to get everything done. I started doing my hair maybe around 2 hours before, and I had to stop doing my hair because my baby needed me. And he was very clingy that day, and he wanted his mama, and there was nothing that was gonna make that change. He wanted his mama. So I made the executive decision to not do the live, which was the right decision. But I just felt so sure that this was what I was supposed to be doing. I had the subject, and I had the scriptures ready, and I had everything ready. And I felt like this was God. I felt like God was allowing me to do this. But I think sometimes let's analyze this. I think sometimes God will allow us to go in a certain direction in order to get our attention, because it gets to a point sometimes where we get too far out in the water, and then we start getting nervous, and then we start calling out for the Lord, right? Because we think it's under our own power. Just like when Jesus told Peter to come out on the water, because Peter said, if it's you, Jesus, bid me to come out on the water, right? And Jesus said, come on. And I think for a split second, Peter assumed that he was walking on the water under his own power, and that he was in control of the situation. And he began to sink, and he got scared, and he said, Jesus, help me, help me, help me. And Jesus reached his hand out to him and said, "O ye of little faith." I think what happened to me was that God bid me to come out and say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this live on this date at this time. I'm going to take the promo pictures. I'm going to edit them and crop them and do what I need to do and make the flyers and all this stuff. I'm going to set the date, and I'm going to, I'm excited. I'm going to go through the motions of getting my hair done and putting on my clothes and getting Alonzo settled. And all that. Only for me to look down and see that I was walking out and think that it was under my own power. And being the human being that I am, and being the flawed human being that I am, I began to get scared. And that's when I began to sink. So I really had to reevaluate, why am I doing this? And it was a scary thing that I had to do, because I'm like, I done got all this ready, and I'm getting ready to do this. Everything is set up. And now I have to step back. But the reason why I had to step back was a good reason. My baby needed me. And I was okay with that. But in the back of my mind, I'm still trying to hold on to the old Pausefunei. And it was hard. It was so hard. And I felt like a failure, because I'm like, I should be able to be that, and Alonzo's mama, and Cliff's wife. I should be able to do all of this. But for whose glory? Mine or God's? Because I don't want to be a good anything and be a mediocre wife. I don't want to be a good anything and be an absentee mother and only interact with my son when it's convenient for me, or only be a wife to my husband when it's convenient for me. And this is the problem that a lot of people have, especially in ministry. People feel like I should still be able to do everything that I was doing and still do. No. Because if we're living by the word here, your household, your family comes first. More importantly, your spouse comes first. And then your children. And then everything else and everybody else. There have been too many times where people have done ministry at the expense of their family. This is why, there's always that joke about PKs, preachers' kids, pastors' kids, that they while out. And a lot of the times they while out because they want attention from their pastor parents, from their ministry parents. They want that validation, that attention. And then they say, well, forget it. I'll just get it from the world. Forget it. I'll just be wild out here. Or either to get acceptance from the world or to get attention from their parents, or both. I don't want that to happen. I don't want my husband to feel like the sheer truth or the Simply Steph podcast is more important than our marriage. I don't want Alonzo to feel like anything that I do is more important than being his mother. So you have to, in going through the transitions and experiencing the transitions and then realizing that you cannot be the same you that you were. Go through the mourning process, because it's a wrap. It's over. That part is over. And that's okay. We are so afraid to end stuff. For example, when I was living in Gainesville, before Cliff and I met, I started seeing a therapist via telehealth, Dr. Lewis. Wonderful, wonderful therapist. There are so many things that she taught me that I still implement today, right? So even after Cliff and I got married and we moved to Alabama, I was still seeing Dr. Lewis via telehealth. And, the idea had been brought up that I do need to have a connect here in Montgomery. I do need to have someone that I can see here in Montgomery if I have a crisis situation, or just someone to see, right? And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's good. We should do. But I didn't do it. And then after I had Alonzo, because this conversation was had during the time I was pregnant. And then when I had Alonzo, I dealt with postpartum depression. My OB, Dr. Zimmerman, who was a fantastic doctor, she talked to me about the feelings I was feeling. And she talked to me about seeing a therapist, and they referred me to someone. And I still, all these weeks later, after my 6-week checkup, all the way up until the other day, still hadn't called the people to make an appointment. Why is that? Because it's stepping into the unknown once again, right? And how I left things with Dr. Lewis, it was such a positive experience. I got a chance to thank her for everything that she had done, everything that she had taught me to help me cope, and, just gave her flowers, right? And I was so glad how everything was left. And it was an ending of a relationship, but it was not a bad ending to a relationship. And she, of course, left the door open anytime I needed to talk to her about anything, that she was available. And she was like, you know where to find me. And I love that. And now it's time for me to embark on the next chapter of this journey, not knowing where all it's going to take me. And it's scary, but it's okay. So when you're trying to figure out who you are now, understand that it's not a bad thing that you're not who you were. Always change up. Strive to change up. No matter what changes you make, change up. Okay? And that's what I have been striving to do, and what I pray to do every day. And you got to take it day by day. You cannot be sitting up here trying to do everything and be everything to everybody. It's not going to work. You're going to burn out. And there is no there's no merit in being a martyr. Sacrificing your happiness, your sanity, your dignity for the sake of anybody It's not healthy and it's not sustainable. So don't do that. Please don't do that. I feel comfortable admitting that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I thought I knew. But when God allows certain things to happen to get your attention, you have to then say to God, okay, God, you have my attention. What do you want me to do? Because the Apostle Paul said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, just because I can do something, that doesn't mean that I should be doing that thing. I can do anything, but I don't need to be doing everything. Okay. And that's how I feel right now. I could be, working myself to the bone, doing certain things. I could be stressing myself out about trying to be on live every Monday. I could be stressing myself out about doing a whole bunch of other things that I had the idea to do last year. But what good would that be if I did that at the expense of my marriage and at the expense of my motherhood relationship with my son? It's not worth it. There's nothing that's worth that. There's nothing wrong with not knowing exactly where you're supposed to be going and what you're supposed to be doing. What is not good, not healthy, is for you to stay in that place. Stay clueless. Stay confused. That's not okay. So whatever you do, be yet figuring it out. Take it day by day, sometimes hour by hour if you have to. You have been listening to the Simply Seth podcast, hosted by yours truly, Pausefunei Sonia, aka Pastor Greer. And I will catch up with you next week. Okay? Love y'all. Bye.